What is going on, everybody? It is me again. It's HorrorFan34, and welcome to another video. And I guess welcome to another installment of the underrated 80s gems videos. Haven't done one of these in a while, but I figured I'd jump back on here and do 5 more films for the underrated 80s gems. Still have a lot of those coming up, and underrated 90s gems and things like that. So I figured, like I said before, just like with the other volumes of this, I'll be showing 5 films per part or per volume. And one of them I don't have because it's only on VHS tape, but I hope it like a DVD-R or something like that, or like maybe like a Warner Archive would release it one day. But I'll get to that though. But I figured I'd talk about these 5 films that I think are underrated 80s movies. And let's get on to it. So the first one here that I'm going to talk about for underrated 80s gems is Meet the Feebles. I would say my favorite Peter Jackson film. I really love the early era of Peter Jackson. You know, Bad Taste, Meet the Feebles, Dead Alive, Heavenly Creatures, The Frighteners. Like, that's my favorite era of Peter Jackson. And of course, Peter Jackson would become famous with the Lord of the Rings movies and King Kong. But I would say this is my favorite of Peter Jackson's like era, and this is my personal favorite of his. Pretty much, basically, this is a very, very strange movie. Very strange. Basically, it's all done with puppets. This is all puppetry. Sort of like they would kind of do this with the Happy Time Murders, but that was kind of more of a blend of puppets and humans, while this one was just strictly puppets. Pretty much if the Muppets were R-rated and very dirty and very raunchy, you would get this. And it's like the whole thing, like, you know, Happy Time Murders had this thing called, like, the Happy Time Gang. While this one, it's Meet the Feebles, which is like a show. And, you know, it's a very, very strange movie. I mean, there's just a lot of crazy stuff that happens in this, and if you like really weird films, I would recommend this, but it's not going to be for everybody. I love it, though. I think it's very, very, very insane. I mean, like, and I like all the different designs of all the puppets. I mean, you have, like, a rat, you have a fly, you have a hippo, you have, like, a rabbit, a frog, you have a whale, a fox, and things like that, and there's like a Siamese cat. I mean, very, very, very well done puppetry as well. But yeah, Meet the Feebles. I had to mention that one for underrated 80s gems. Now we're on to the one that I said before that's not on DVD that I don't have, but actually the full movie is actually on YouTube. Actually, the full movie is actually on YouTube, and it's a film called Dead End City. This is a pretty sort of cool, sort of like a futuristic movie, kind of like in this, you know, kind of like dealing with like a person protecting their place, sort of like an Assault on Precinct 13 sort of like situation, where it takes place, because I think this film came out in 1988, and basically it deals with in the future, like the governments have allowed street gangs to rule the streets, and everybody has evacuated from the city to move somewhere else because this city's been overrun by gangs. And there's one particular motorcycle gang or street gang, however you want to classify them as, called the Rats. And they are headed by this guy named Maximum, played by the Maniac Cop himself, Robert Z'Dar. May he rest in peace. And basically it deals with this factory worker who decides that he doesn't want to leave, he doesn't want to quit, so he decides to stay back and fight off this gang, and some of these people are helping him. There's a news reporter lady who gets stuck there doing a story, and she sort of gets caught up in the middle of it, so she stays down there to help out our lead, Jack Murphy, the character name, and they develop a sort of like a romance between each other. And you know, Robert Z'Dar, this was around the time he just did Maniac Cop, and this is before Maniac Cop 2, Maniac Cop 3. The same year, I think the year after this, he would have Tango and Cash as one of the prisoners. Robert Z'Dar is easily the best part of the film. He's very entertaining to watch as the villain. You can tell he's having a lot of fun playing the part. He's definitely the highlight of the film. The guy that plays Jack Murphy, I think Gregory Scott Cummins, I think that's the actor name. He's pretty good too as our lead. One of the guys that helps him out is an actor, Johnny Vanucore or something like that. He was one of the bad guys in Savage Streets with Linda Blair. He's in here as one of the guys that helps out the lead guy. I like the woman that played the news reporter lady. I thought she was really good. And something in my trash can just moved. I think it was a wrapper. So that was scary. But yeah, it's not really an action-packed movie. It's more of a thriller with a little bit of action here and there with some nice guns and things like that between the standoff between the main guy and Robert Z'Dar. And you find out there's like all these corrupt cops that are behind the whole thing, and they're allowing this gang to run the streets and things like that. But if you like sort of like Assault on Precinct 13, sort of like movies, it's definitely worth a look, in my opinion. It's on YouTube. The full movie's on YouTube, so you can check it out for yourself. But the next one I'm going to mention for underrated 80s gems, and I actually mentioned this when I did my Chuck Norris collection, but it is from 1988, and it's my favorite of Chuck Norris, and it's definitely underrated from the 80s. The Hero and the Terror. Like I was saying in the Chuck Norris collection, this is sort of Chuck Norris's one of the few times he got too close to being in a horror film, but it has more of a thriller vibe, where he plays a detective who captured this killer in the past, and he caught a lucky break. They called him the hero that stopped the terror, and he's like, they should not really be calling me a hero. I just caught a lucky break. But then this killer comes back many years later. He breaks out of prison, and Chuck Norris has to stop him again. And I love the whole finale in the movie theater where the killer hides at. Like I said before, it has a little bit of a Phantom of the Opera vibe to it. But I mentioned this before when I was talking about my Chuck Norris collection, but I love that movie. Another one here that I would say is underrated, this is from 89. I believe so. Yeah, 89. See No Evil, Hear No Evil. One of my personal favorite comedies of all time. I would say it's in my top 10 favorite comedies. I love this movie. It's hilarious as hell. It's my favorite collaboration between these two guys. It's my favorite Pryor film and Gene Wilder film, and it's my favorite with both of them in it. I mean, one guy is deaf, one guy is blind, there's a murder, they get framed and they got to prove their innocence. A lot of really great funny moments in the film. I mean, because Richard Pryor's character is blind and Gene Wilder's deaf, but Gene Wilder can read lips. He can read lips. He's a good lip reader. And the guy calls him a bad name, and Gene Wilder realizes what he called him. It was like a trucker, because Gene Wilder can't hear, and he's like trying to cross the street, and this truck almost hits him. He's like, I forget what the guy says to him, but then like the guy stops, and Gene Wilder's like still looking back at him, and the guy starts flipping him off, and Gene Wilder's screaming, "You're a dumb idiot! You are a dumb idiot!" And Richard Pryor happens to be there, but Richard Pryor can't see because he's blind. And he's like, "You talking to me, asshole?" He's like, "Up yours!" Gene Wilder says to the guy, "Up yours!" And Richard Pryor's like, "Oh man, I heard that song before. Now listen, dickhead, you want to get something off your chest?" And he starts swinging, trying to hit. He's swinging. And I'm trying to think of another one. Another really good fun moment between the two. When they're in a bar, and Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder get into a fight with this guy, and Richard Pryor's like, "Stand up, boy," and he's like, "I am standing," because Richard Pryor can't see because he's blind. So, yeah, this is such a fun movie, really funny movie. Love seeing both these guys are no longer with us anymore. It's just a really fun comedy. And the last one that I'm going to mention here for underrated 80s gems, and I had to mention this one too. When I think of like really good dark comedies, like good black comedies, this is one of my top one. This is probably like my top one I always think of. Heathers. I love this movie a lot. I love this movie. I absolutely love the steelbook. Has a really good design, has interior artwork and the disc art. I mean, just a wonderful steelbook. And a great 80s black comedy. Winona Ryder, you have Christian Slater, you have Shannon Doherty. I mean, I'm not going to try to explain the plot because it's a little hard to explain, but it's like Winona Ryder plays this girl named Heather. There's like a few girls that are named Heather. And Christian Slater's character is the new kid in town. And him and Winona Ryder become friends with one another. And then they come up with this idea of what it would be like to kill off the main Heather, and all kinds of hijinks happen. And it's such a good, really good dark comedy. I mean, and I think my good friend Lauren is a really big fan of this film too. And it's really hard to argue against that. But because it's a great dark comedy. One of my favorite 80s films of all time, period. So that's going to be it for this underrated 80s gems. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.